essentially, when you look at a map, there's this fundamental expectation of permanence, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Maps are, well, they're fundamentally static.
Right. It feels like engineering. You draw a jagged line for a mountain range,
Yeah.
a blue squiggle for a river, maybe a little cluster of dots for a city.
And the cartographer just points to it and says, yep, there it is. That's the world.
Exactly. It's fixed. And honestly, it's incredibly comforting. As a species, I think we deeply prefer the ground beneath our feet to just, be predictable.
We want it to be categorized and, most importantly, to stay put. We treat the Earth as this neutral stage where our lives just kind of happen to play out.
But today, for this deep dive, we are throwing that static map totally out the window.
Oh, completely.
Because we are exploring a universe where evolution is driven by literal physicalized trauma, where house cats can break the minds of superheroes.
Which is still my favorite part, by the way.
It's so good. And it's a world where the ground beneath your feet actively holds a grudge. So for anyone listening right now, whether you're a world building aficionado, a fantasy lore junkie, or just someone who loves a story where nature, magic, and science all blur together, we have something really wild for you today.
We've spent the last week poring over this massive collaborative universe.
Yeah, we are talking sprawling wiki-style entries, dense timeline notes, YouTube channel descriptions.
Royal Road serials and some truly chaotic Wattpad stories.
Very chaotic. But they all detail this incredibly intricate fictional universe known as the ethereal star system. And specifically, we're looking at its living, breathing planet, Yaenddarr.
Right, and synthesizing this material reveals a world that functions on rules just completely alien to our own. To even understand Yaenddarr, you have to discard our traditional models of physics.
And biology, really.
Yeah, exactly. We need to start by looking at the very creation of the ethereal star system because it completely defies the standard cosmological model of a Big Bang.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand the mechanics of that.
Okay.
Because a standard universe expands, right? It throws matter and heat outward into a void. How does an implosion create a star system?
Well, the sources describe this void containing a singular point of infinite density, basically a black hole that reached a critical mass.
Right.
But instead of continuing to consume everything, the internal pressure caused it to shatter inward. It folded space and released this massive torrent of raw, unfiltered energy.
Hey, wow.
And the foundational rule of this new universe, the aspect that changes literally everything, is that this released energy was uniquely imbued with consciousness.
So it wasn't just like inert matter and gas.
No, it wasn't just heat and rocks. It was pure awareness.
It makes me think of like a cosmic brain waking up for the very first time. Instead of rocks colliding randomly in the dark, the energy itself actually realizes it exists.
That is a great way to put it.
The stars and planets are essentially synapses and neurons firing as this massive entity begins to process its own existence, right?
That synapse analogy tracks perfectly with the lore. Because out of this conscious energy network, the first two primordial eons emerge.
Basically the gods of this setting.
You can view them as gods, yeah. But they function more like physical laws of nature that are driven by distinct philosophies. First, you have Celestria. She represents unconditional, motherly love, and lunar energy.
Which is such a specific, intentional flavor of creation. I mean, she isn't just a generic deity of goodness or light.
Right, it's not just basic benevolence.
It's nurturing, protective, almost fiercely maternal love.
Exactly. And in stark contrast to her stands the second eon, Nexus. Now, Nexus embodies logic, order, and absolute technological precision.
It's like a cosmic calculator.
Very much so. And as these two eons grow in their awareness, they each construct a world that acts as a physical manifestation of their core philosophies. So Nexus builds a planet named Koa.
And Koa is the machine world, right?
Yeah. Koa is described as a world governed by rigid laws, flawless systems, and an entirely optimized society. It functions as the ultimate technological utopia. Or, depending on your tolerance for absolute control, a terrifying dystopia.
Yeah, precision over passion. But Celestria takes a completely different path.
She does. Celestria gives birth to Yaenddarr, and Yaenddarr is not a machine, nor is it a neutral rock. It's a direct extension of her love.
A planet of just overwhelming abundance.
Yes, designed to let life flourish wildly under the gentle influence of lunar energy. It is a world that possesses its own literal pulse.
Okay, wait, let me stop you right there. Because if Celestria is the embodiment of pure, unconditional love, how do we end up with the hyper-violent predators and terrifying monsters that the sources talk about later?
That is a very fair question.
If a planet is made of love, shouldn't it just be like a peaceful garden?
That's the central paradox of Yaenddarr, and it really goes back to what happens when you grant an environment true sentience. Because unconditional love does not mean micromanagement.
Oh, I see.
Celestria provides the spark and the nurturing environment, but she allows the planet to feel and react to the life upon it. The geography itself is highly reactive.
Which means every single region develops a distinct personality based on its history.
Exactly.
And this brings us to my absolute favorite detour in the source notes.
Mhm.
I really want to spend some time on this because it completely changes how you view a map.
I know exactly what you're going to bring up.
You know it. While reading about the different regions of Yaenddarr, I found this place called Autumn Falls, and the text describes it as a town locked in an eternal, enchanting autumn.
It's such a beautiful concept.
It really is. Like, if you are listening to this, picture your hometown, but imagine it is permanently frozen in mid-October.
Best time of the year.
Right. The leaves are always brilliant, orange and gold. There's that permanent crispness in the air. The scent of wood smoke never fades. And the sun always sits at that perfect, nostalgic twilight angle.
But naturally, you were skeptical.
Oh, pure skepticism at first. I mean, how does a localized eternal season actually work mechanically? Does the planet's orbit just magically ignore one specific zip code?
And that's where the mechanics of Autumn Falls provide the perfect case study for Yaenddar's sentient ecosystem. The planet isn't ignoring orbital physics, the terrain is superseding them.
Through, what, geochemical resonance?
Geochemical and magical resonance, yeah. The land itself acts as a literal record keeper. In Yaenddarr, when a group of people experiences a period of profound collective emotional significance, the soil, the flora, and the atmospheric magic absorb that frequency.
Okay, so the ground acts like photographic film, but instead of capturing light, it captures a mood.
That is exactly it. It captures the emotional resonance and physically crystallizes it. So the environment is directly influenced by the survival, culture, and history of its inhabitants.
Wow.
In the case of Autumn Falls, the people there clearly experienced an era of profound peace, or maybe a massive harvest, just a bittersweet but beautiful cultural memory tied to that specific season.
And the planet just remembers that autumn.
It remembers. The sentience of Yaenddarr basically decides to preserve that emotional state. It maintains the atmospheric pressure, the temperature, and even halts the biological decay of the leaves indefinitely.
Just creating a permanent geographic monument to a feeling,
Yes.
that is amazing. Think about that for a second. If you're walking to work right now, listening to this, or driving in your car, think about what your neighborhood has been through over the last 100 years.
It would look very different.
Totally different. If our Earth worked like Yaenddarr, the ground wouldn't just be concrete and dirt. If a tragic battle happened in your local park centuries ago, the park might be locked in a permanent weeping rainstorm.
Right.
Or if your town had a massive joyous festival that everyone loved, the temperature might just naturally stay a perfect 72 degrees with a permanent golden hour. The ground you walk on is literally feeling the vibe of its history and matching it.
And that living, breathing, emotionally resonant terrain is the core driver of everything that happens on Yaenddarr. We see this concentrated most powerfully when we zoom into the beating heart of the planet, which is the Elysium forest.
The forest didn't just evolve normally, right?
No, not through slow Darwinian plant mutation. It sprouted from a singular primordial seed that was gifted directly by Celestria.
A concentrated repository of life potential, like dropping a botanical nuclear bomb, but for creation instead of destruction.
That's a great visual. When the newly formed Yaenddarr stabilized, this seed germinated. The sources refer to the event as a verdant tide sweeping across the landscape.
And it established this crazy, self-sustaining ecosystem of luminous flora.
Right, plants that don't rely on standard photosynthesis from a sun. Instead, they draw energy directly from ambient starlight and lunar radiation.
Which is so cool. And then there are the sylvans.
Yes, to protect this incredibly vital space, the forest autonomously birthed a species called the sylvans.
And they are beings made entirely of living wood, earth, and vines. So if the forest is a giant living organism, the sylvans are essentially its white blood cells.
They are literally the planet's immune system. They patrol the Elysium forest, working in perfect harmony with the natural order to nurture the landscape, prune the overgrowth, and neutralize any invasive threats.
But the sylvans and the glowing plants are just the surface layer. Because here's where it gets really interesting. The true magic of the Elysium forest lies deep underground with the creation of Elixir.
Yes, Elixir, the lifeblood of the forest.
The birth of Elixir sounds like a planetary seismic event. but a deeply intentional one. The lore describes the ground literally splitting open in the four cardinal directions.
And out of these massive glowing crevices, this viscous, radiant, five-colored liquid spews out.
And the texts explain that elixir is created from a fusion of fey essence and lunar water. But let's break down those mechanics, because when I read fey essence, my mind immediately goes to fairy dust or, generic magic sparkles.
Right, Tinkerbell stuff.
Yeah, exactly. What actually is fey essence in the context of this universe?
But within Yaenddarr's metaphysical framework, fey essence is the concentrated potential energy left over from the planet's creation.
Okay.
Think of it as unassigned stem cells for reality. It is pure, chaotic potential.
Wow. Okay. Unassigned stem cells for reality.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And when you mix that raw potential with lunar water, which Celestria imbued with her motherly, preserving love, the lunar water acts as a stabilizing solvent. It binds the chaotic potential into a physical, liquid state.
And the physical properties of elixir are absolutely staggering. Because it's a glowing liquid erupting from the center of the Earth, your brain assumes it acts like magma,
I
right?
think it would incinerate anything it touches.
Exactly. But there is a scene where an elder touches it and it doesn't scald. The text says it sings. Not with audible sound, but with sensory vibrations.
It strikes a chord across the veins of whoever touches it.
It isn't just water, and it isn't blood. It's a liquid archive of the planet's emotional memory.
And that archival property is arguably the most complex mechanism on Yaenddarr. Elixir doesn't just record what happens. It catalogs the precise emotional frequency of every soul that has ever interacted with the forest.
And we see the ultimate application of this property in Suralis.
Yes, the underwater city.
Suralis is located entirely underwater, populated by merfolk. And within this city are the rebirthing pools, which are essentially massive reservoirs of elixir.
Right. And the merfolk use these pools to perform a ritual that completely redefines the fantasy trope of resurrection.
Because in most fantasy settings, resurrection is incredibly aggressive. Like a wizard casts a spell, lightning strikes, and a soul is violently shoved back into a corpse.
It's medical necromancy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But the merfolk aren't just healing broken bodies.
No, they are performing what the texts call soul stitching. When a person dies, their soul doesn't always stay perfectly intact. Trauma, fear, or a violent death can cause the soul to fragment into pieces.
Which is tragic.
Very. But the merfolk use the emotional memory stored within the elixir to reconstruct those fragmented souls.
Let's use an analogy here to make sense of this, because it sounds incredibly similar to restoring a corrupted computer hard drive.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. Like if a computer crashes and you lose a massive file, you have a gap in the code. But if your system has cache-specific, tiny snapshots of that file, maybe just a thumbnail image or a string of text from a saved document, a data recovery program can use those tiny fragments to reconstruct the missing data around them.
Elixir acts as that data recovery program, but it uses emotional anchors instead of code.
What kind of anchors do they use?
Well, the lore provides specific examples. The elixir will utilize a specific name remembered by an ancient tree, or the echo of a laugh trapped in the whispering glade. It could even be the rhythm of breath shared between two people beneath a great root.
That is so poetic.
It is. The merfolk manipulate the elixir to weave the fragmented mind and body back into wholeness, utilizing pure nostalgia and love as the binding agents.
There is a deeply poignant quote from a merfolk character named Celine during one of these rituals. She whispers, "We don't command souls to return. We remind them they are welcome to."
That line always gives me chills.
We remind them they are welcome to. It's such a gentle, profound shift in perspective. It completely strips away the arrogance of commanding life and death. It's an invitation.
And it perfectly encapsulates Celestria's philosophy. You cannot force life to exist through control. You can only nurture the optimal conditions and invite it to return.
Absolutely. And this deep, bizarre, a beautiful connection to life and biology is also heavily present in the primary inhabitants of the Elysium forest, the Florians.
The humanoid plant being.
Yes, and I have to talk about their biology because reading about them genuinely broke my brain.
The Umok story.
The Umok story. There's a story detailed in the sources about a Florian elder named Umok. He is participating in a training exercise, he's sparring, and he makes a miscalculation, and the result is catastrophic. His arm is completely severed.
Which is horrifying.
Right. If you are listening to this and looking at your own arm right now, a severed limb is a tragedy. It's a massive medical emergency, usually involving tourniquets, panic, and permanent disability.
But on Yaenddarr, the rules of biology operate on a completely different axis. Destruction in the Elysium forest is rarely an endpoint.
It's almost always a catalyst for a new biological process.
Exactly. When Umak's severed arm hits the forest floor, his body immediately begins to heal rapidly. But the arm itself doesn't just lay there rotting.
No, the wound on the severed arm erupts in a massive cloud of botanical spores, and from those spores, right where his vital energy and sap hit the earth, a tiny sapling emerges.
And it grows fast.
So fast, within a matter of hours, fueled by the ambient magic of the forest, that sapling rapidly matures into a young Florian, a completely new, living, breathing, sentient person.
Umak names her Elara.
And she becomes his companion, essentially his daughter. He loses a limb in a violent accident, and through that trauma, he gains a child.
It's botanical cloning triggered by trauma, acting as a stunning physical metaphor for resilience. We often talk about post-traumatic growth in psychology, the idea that people can experience positive psychological changes after struggling with a major life crisis.
Yeah.
The Florians literally physically manifest post-traumatic growth. A devastating injury physically births new life.
It is such a beautiful system. The planet remembers your happy autumns. The magic liquid reconstructs your soul using the memory of your laugh, and your severed arm turns into your daughter. It feels perfectly balanced.
It does.
But a perfectly balanced ecosystem makes for a very short story. This delicate, deeply interconnected world is about to be violently disrupted by something entirely outside of its planetary rules.
Yes, the disruption arrives in the form of Lycaios, the Starborn.
The Star Boy.
Exactly. Lycaios is not a piece of space debris or a standard meteor. He is the son of the primordial Aeon Celestria. He was formed directly from her essence, crafted into the physical shape of a star to traverse the cosmos.
But things go wrong.
Very wrong. An anomaly in the cosmic winds knocks him severely off his trajectory, sending him plummeting directly toward Yaenddarr.
So he's a literal star hurtling toward a planet made of trees. That's a bad combination.
A very bad combination. To avoid completely incinerating the Elysium forest on impact, Lycaios forces his form to shrink and aims his trajectory for Levik's Lake, which is a massive body of elixir.
He hits the water with a thunderous crash, and the extreme reaction between his celestial heat and the liquid archive causes his star form to dissolve.
And when he finally steps out of the elixir waters, his anatomy is fundamentally changed.
He looks amazing, though. The sources describe him as a humanoid figure with indigo skin.
But the most striking feature is his circulatory system. His veins are not filled with blood. They are literal glowing lunar constellations pulsing just beneath his skin.
He's cosmic royalty, stumbling out of a glowing lake. But the impact gave him profound amnesia.
Right. He has no idea who he is, what his powers are, or where he is.
And Yaenddarr does not give him a single moment to catch his breath. The second he steps onto the shore, he is instantly hunted by a savage creature known as a dire cat.
Scar.
Scar. This brings us to one of the most metal, jaw-dropping character origins in the entire lore, the story of Scar.
Scar is the dire cat that attacks Lycaios. But understanding him really requires looking at his history, because his origin is a sequence of events so brutal it borders on mythological.
Tell them the rock story, because this blew my mind.
Okay, so originally Scar was just a standard dire cat. A formidable predator, sure, but still part of the normal food chain. One day, he's ambushed and snatched up by a giant roc, a massive apex predator bird.
A giant bird just scoops him up.
Exactly. The roc carries Scar high into the alien sky, far above the forest canopy, ascending until the extreme altitude and freezing temperatures cause Scar to pass out.
And then the bird just drops him.
Just let them go. Scar goes into an uncontrolled freefall, plummeting into a desolate, jagged mountain range. He crashes into the peaks, shattering nearly every bone in his body.
By all laws of physics and biology, he should be dead.
He really should be. But through an astronomical stroke of luck, he lands directly inside the roc's massive nest, wedged between two enormous unhatched eggs.
The mother bird drops her takeout dinner directly into the crib.
Basically, yeah. So Scar wakes up in agony, broken and starving. But the warmth of his body heat and the ambient temperature actually causes the eggs to hatch.
Oh, man.
Out pop these fragile, vulnerable little apex predator chicks. And Scar, dragging his shattered limbs, doesn't hesitate for a second. He eats them.
He just eats them. It's like the ultimate wilderness survival horror movie.
It really is. And this is where the magic system of Yaenddarr intersects with biology. Because in this world, consuming a highly magical creature allows the predator to absorb its latent potential and life force.
Okay, so because Star consumes the offspring of an apex monster while he's on the brink of death, his body undergoes a massive accelerated transformation.
Exactly. His muscle mass doubles. His shattered bones fuse back together, reinforced by the stolen life force. He mutates into a hyper-predator.
He essentially injects himself with avian super soldier serum.
That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah.
And when the mother rock finally returns to the nest and cries out in mourning for her chicks, Scar doesn't try to sneak away.
No, he doesn't.
He ambushes the massive bird. He leaps, sinking his new mutated claws into her. They lock together in a death spiral, plummeting off the edge of the mountain.
Scar is so intelligent and vicious that he uses the mother bird's own weight and aerodynamics to ensure she takes the brunt of the impact.
Right, he crushes her neck against the rocks at the bottom. When the dust clears, only Scar rises. He is larger, stronger, and fundamentally warped by the experience. He is now starved for vengeance against the entire world.
He becomes a living engine of survival and spite. And this is the monster that catches the son of Lycaios, the glowing, confused star boy who just fell from the sky.
And Scar just stalks Lycaios relentlessly through the Elysium forest.
This kicks off a desperate subterranean scramble for survival. Lycaios is completely outmatched physically. He has no memory of his celestial power, and he is bleeding starlight from the claw wounds Star gives him during their first encounter.
So Lycaios is forced to adapt to the brutal reality of the forest floor. He spends his days hiding in root-woven hollows, spaces just barely large enough for a child to squeeze into.
And he finds those glowing fungi, right?
Yeah, he discovers that the glowing lunar fungi growing on the walls of these hollows possess restorative properties, and he uses them to pack his wounds and halt the bleeding.
He's observing the native creatures, learning to mimic their movements, silencing his footsteps, and slipping between the shadows of the massive trees.
But he quickly realizes that playing a game of stealth on the forest floor against a hyper-mutated tracking cat is a losing battle.
Because Scar can track his scent through the soil itself.
Right. The ground belongs to the predator, so Lycaios has to completely change his paradigm. If the earth is a death trap, he has to look up.
And this realization initiates one of the most significant architectural and cultural shifts in the history of the Florians.
It really does. As we enter month 5 of Lycaios' timeline on Yaenddarr, he taps into a latent celestial intuition. As a being formed in the cosmos, he possesses an innate subconscious understanding of gravity, tension, and structural engineering.
So he begins to apply this cosmic physics to carpentry.
Exactly. It starts building upward.
He crafts floating tree houses suspended high in the ancient branches. He weaves incredibly complex suspension cords out of tough vines, engineering them to hold massive amounts of weight while swaying perfectly with the wind.
And he designs observatory shells with roofs that open like flowers to expose the night sky.
He is single-handedly creating a canopy village.
But to understand the impact of this, you really have to grasp the cultural friction it causes. The Florians up to this point are deeply biologically connected to the earth.
Right, they are ground dwellers and subterranean builders.
Their entire society is built around the roots of the trees, close to the soil that birthed them. For a Florian, living disconnected from the ground goes against their very nature. They view Lycaios' canopy structures with extreme skepticism.
There is an amazing vignette in the lore that highlights this cultural shift perfectly. An elder Florian mother, who hasn't slept a single night off the ground in 70 years, approaches one of Lycaios' new suspended structures.
She climbs the access ladder, fully intending to condemn it as an insult to the forest's traditions.
But when she reaches out and places her hand on the wood of the treehouse, she feels it pulse.
The wood is still alive.
The forest itself is vibrating with approval for this new architecture. It isn't a dead structure hammered together with nails, it's an extension of the tree. And that night, she refuses to climb back down. She sleeps in the canopy.
It's a profound paradigm shift for the Florians. They realize they aren't abandoning nature, they're integrating with a different, higher layer of it.
Which kicks off a massive architectural revolution. The Florians begin building cradle nests for their infants out of song-spun moss, and they construct wind-guided chimneys to carry the smoke of their hearths away. The village of Sylvetra is officially reborn in the sky.
However, in Yaenddarr, every action has an equal evolutionary reaction.
The ecosystem does not remain static.
No, it doesn't. What's fascinating here is how the predators adapt to this cultural shift. The predators do not just look up at the tree houses and give up.
The Pharaohs.
Yes, the Pharaohs, which are these chaotic, aggressive beasts originating from a region called the Wildling Field. The text describes this incredibly eerie night where the forest below the canopy goes completely, unnervingly silent.
And then the Florians start hearing the slow, rhythmic tearing sound against the bark of the massive trees.
This is where we see the terrifying mechanics of the ferrobiology. They possess the ability to rapidly undergo reactive mutation. Because their prey has moved out of reach, the ferrets spontaneously develop heavily reinforced retractable claws specifically designed to scale the vertical trunks.
The ultimate safe haven of the canopy is suddenly breached.
It kicks off an intense, desperate arms race. Lycaios, alongside his Floridian companion Alara, has to turn this peaceful canopy village into a lethal fortress.
And the engineering of their traps is brilliant. They aren't just tying rocks to ropes or using sharpened sticks, they're weaving forest magic into complex defensive perimeters.
Let's examine the mechanics of those defenses, because they're really clever. They construct pit traps, but instead of just covering them with leaves, they veil them with specialized moss that projects illusion runes.
Making the trap look completely indistinguishable from solid branches.
Right, and they deploy snare vines laced with a specific strain of stinging spores. When a Farah triggers the tripwire mid-leap, the vine cinches shut and injects a paralytic agent.
They even build thorn launchers disguised as glowing decorative lanterns. When a predator gets too close, the lantern detonates, sending hardened, armor-piercing thorns into the beast.
It's a brilliant synthesis of Lycaios' strategic cosmic mind and Alara's deep, empathetic connection to the flora.
They are basically enchanting the earth to fight back on their behalf.
But despite this incredible defensive engineering, the climax of month 6 brings a Farah siege that threatens to overwhelm the village entirely.
Right, because the Pharaohs attack in overwhelming numbers. They scale the trees like a swarm of insects tearing through the lower defensive platforms.
The traps are holding as long as they can, the illusion runes are glowing and misdirecting the beasts, Florian archers are firing volleys of arrows, but there is just too much mass.
The Pharaohs are on the verge of overrunning the main canopy, and just when it looks completely hopeless, the sky literally opens up. Down from the clouds above the canopy, the royal fairy guard descends.
It's a stunning visual sequence. The guards appear as violet and silver streaks slicing through the wind, wearing specialized aerodynamic armor that glints with light bloom runes.
They hit the climbing pharaoh lines with radiant kinetic force, and the impact is devastating. Within minutes, they completely rout the beasts.
The mindless feral rage breaks, turning into pure fear, and the surviving Ferris flee back down the trunks, retreating toward the wildling field.
The Florians survive. They throw this massive festival to celebrate, stringing up fireflies and drinking nectar wine. But underneath the victory, if you read between the lines of the lore, there is this chilling reality setting in.
Yeah, they won the battle, but the war with the Ferris seems fundamentally endless.
Because you can't really kill a pharaoh. When you kill one of these beasts, it just respawns.
Which brings us to the most profound, mechanically complex, and philosophically challenging theme of the entire Yaenddarr lore.
Let's get into it.
We need to examine the true biological and psychological nature of the Pharaoh and what their respawning actually represents. If we look closely at the region they originate from, the wildling field, we realize it's not just a monster spawning zone in a video game.
It's a psychological crucible.
Exactly. When a Pharaoh is killed on the forest, its physical body degrades, but its essence returns to the wildling field. It reemerges from the boiling, corrupted Elixir lakes located there.
But they don't just come back angry because they lost a fight. They come back carrying the traumatic memory of their past deaths stacked on top of an ancient ancestral trauma.
The lore explains that the wildling field was created during a historic, catastrophic wildfire. The pharaohs are fueled entirely by the pain of being burned alive in that fire generations ago.
They are essentially a species trapped in an endless trauma loop. Their biology is entirely reactive and mimic-based.
Right. When they respawn, they shift into predatory forms based on whatever they have consumed or whatever has killed them. They act as garbled, physical mimics of the violence they have experienced.
They don't possess a true original form anymore. They are just fury given a temporary physical shape.
And because they keep dying, respawning, and absorbing more violence, this collective trauma eventually reaches a critical mass in the wildling field.
The text describes it manifesting into an entity called the Fury.
The Fury is a towering, massive specter, dragging these vaporous chains made from the failed, agonizing transformations of thousands of dead Pharaoh.
It isn't a beast with fangs and claws. It is literal, embodied abandonment and pain. It's the culmination of every Farah that felt it wasn't enough to be saved.
Which begs the question.
Yeah, if you are a warrior in this universe, how do you physically fight a concept like abandonment? How do you swing a sword at literal, physicalized depression and rage?
The short answer is you don't. You cannot defeat trauma with more violence. Slashing at the fury with a sword just validates its pain and feeds its mass.
And the Florian Sentinels, the elite warriors of the forest, they understand this.
They do. When they are forced to confront the fury, they employ a tactical approach that is radically pacifist and incredibly costly.
They let the fury strike them down, they put their weapons away, stand their ground, and let this towering manifestation of rage kill them.
Yes, they do not surrender out of cowardice. They offer themselves as a biological filter.
Because the Florians are fundamentally bound to the elixir, which we established earlier, holds memory, empathy, and healing.
Exactly. When a sentinel is struck down, their pure empathetic essence filters directly into the fury.
It's like injecting coolant into an overheating reactor. If we connect this back to the broader mechanics of the planet, those elixir lakes in the wildling field are acting as a massive cosmic filter for the planet's psychology.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that's precisely the mechanism at play. As the Farah die and respawn over and over, clashing in the wildling field and occasionally striking down a selfless Florian sentinel, the elixir is slowly, agonizingly burning away their madness.
The lake recycles their destruction, filtering the raw emotion again and again.
Each rebirth, each cycle through the elixir burns away one layer of that ancient rage.
Until eventually the cycle breaks. The Pharaohs reach a point where they simply stop fighting. The lore describes a beautiful ceremony called the Rite of Ash-Stilled Resonance.
The Pharaohs physically lay down their mimic skins. They stop pretending to be the monsters that hurt them.
They evolve from the chaotic Pharaoh into what the lore calls cleared ones, and finally they achieve a permanent state of peace known as becoming. The rage is literally filtered through the earth into rhythm and forgiveness.
It is a stunning, mechanically robust metaphor for processing grief and anger. The planet forces these creatures to continually confront their pain, offering them the empathy of the Sentinels until they can finally find peace.
We actually see a parallel journey with Alara, Umak's daughter. For a long time, there were whispers among the Florians that because she was born from trauma from Umak's violently severed arm, she might have inherent ties to the dark, consuming entities known as shadows that roam the savage jungle.
But when the Sylvan medics finally examine her magical essence, they discover the exact opposite. She isn't born of shadow.
She possesses pure solar star potential.
Right, she isn't designed to just balance darkness or coexist with it. She is biologically designed to ignite it. She has the specific power to purify the dark shadows, converting their entropic mass into harmless, energy-producing solar fae.
She transforms destructive entropy into sustainable light. Her existence perfectly mirrors the Pharaoh's journey. From an act of violence, a mechanism of pure healing is born.
The philosophical depth here is staggering. You could write a college thesis on the psychological metaphors embedded in Yaenddarr's biology.
Oh, easily. But here's the craziest part of this entire deep dive. This incredibly dense, emotionally resonant lore is not confined to a single, neatly published fantasy novel written by one author. It's a massive, multi-platform, collaborative sandbox.
The metaverse of Yaenddarr is arguably as fascinating as the in-universe mechanics we've just discussed.
When we zoom out and look at the actual sources providing this lore, we see that this world is being built, expanded, and remixed across Royal Road serials, Wattpad stories, and even a dedicated YouTube channel.
It is an open-source mythology because different creators are playing in this exact same sandbox. Utilizing the rules of elixir and planetary memory, you get these wild, vastly different alternate realities.
So, for example, there is a prominent storyline on Royal Road called the Empty Kingdom narrative.
The Empty Kingdom is a drastic departure from the pastoral beauty of the Elysium Forest. It takes the core concepts of Yaenddarr, the sentient environment, the magic of memory, and places them into a bleak, dystopian, cyberpunk setting.
Imagine a hyper-corporate, futuristic version of Manhattan, which is suppressed by massive, brutalist structures called dampener spires.
The mechanics of these dampener spires are fascinating. They broadcast a frequency that literally dampens the human spirit and severs humanity's connection to the planet's memory, all to keep the labor force compliant and docile.
It is aggressively bleak.
But the narrative shifts when a supernatural atmospheric storm, referred to as the Great Discharge, strikes the city and shatters the dampener spires.
Without the suppressing frequency, everyday corporate drones suddenly start awakening to their ancient Yaenddarr heritage.
Right, the biological magic of the Florians, the kinetic power of the Fae, the celestial architecture of the avatars, it all bleeds into this concrete cyberpunk reality.
The citizens use this awakened ancient magic to fight back against the corporate monoliths. It explores the exact same themes of liberation, memory, and trauma, but filtered through a completely different genre lens.
And if you think a cyberpunk pivot is wild, let's talk about the YouTube channel.
Oh, yes. Because alongside the incredibly serious narrated lore videos explaining the history of Celestria, there is a playlist for the Mugen Showdown arena.
The creators literally used the Yaenddarr environments as the background stages for insane crossover fighting game simulations.
We are talking about Dante and Virgil from Devil May Cry teaming up to fight Trigon and Darkseid, all while the Elysium Forest burns in the background.
Or my personal favorite, Goku fighting the 5 stages of Hulk, utilizing the Elixir Lakes as a combat hazard.
It demonstrates the incredible versatility and durability of the setting. The framework of Yaenddarr is strong enough to host a deeply emotional meditation on ancestral trauma, while simultaneously serving as a high-octane arena for pop culture titans to bash each other through mountains.
And we haven't even touched the Wattpad wildcards.
I was gleefully scrolling through these because the creativity is just chaotic, unhinged, and wonderful.
Very chaotic.
There is this one incredibly detailed story that uses the mechanics of Yaenddarr as a framing device for the entire anime of One Piece.
Oh, I read that one.
The author posits that an autistic boy named Luffy is bleeding out in the Alabasta Desert, and the entire 1,000-episode anime is just his dying mind fracturing.
His brain is trying to cope with the reality of his trauma, utilizing the planetary memory magic of Yaenddarr to construct a sprawling, fictional pirate adventure to put the pieces of his broken life back together.
It is a profound, if dark, interpretation. It takes a universally beloved, lighthearted adventure property and reframes it entirely through a lens of profound psychological trauma, perfectly utilizing the core Yaenddarr theme that memory shapes reality.
And then, swinging the pendulum to the complete opposite end of the emotional spectrum, you have a Wattpad story titled The Cat That Broke the Justice League.
A masterpiece of absolute absurdity. A mysterious, completely average-looking house cat appears out of nowhere on the Justice League watchtower. Within minutes, half the League is emotionally traumatized. The Teen Titans are weeping in the corner.
The Green Lanterns are questioning the fundamental cosmic purpose of willpower.
And Batman, refusing to be left out of a mystery, decides to use a highly advanced telepathic translator on the cat to figure out what it's saying.
He realizes this random feline is speaking a cosmic language older than magic itself.
A language based entirely on the chaotic frequencies of Yaenddar's unformed Fey essence. It is more profane and existentially terrifying than anything mortals were ever meant to hear.
It is a linguistic weapon of mass destruction in the shape of a tabby cat.
So, what does this all mean? When you look at all of these disparate pieces, from the cosmic implosion to the cyberpunk resistance, down to a traumatizing house cat, you see that Yaenddarr is not just a static story.
It functions as a mythological operating system. It is a framework where creators can process everything from the deepest philosophical questions about forgiveness and ecological harmony to explosive pop culture combat and absurd comedy.
It's a testament to the absolute power of collaborative world building. If you give people a playground with clearly defined, emotionally resonant rules, a world where the land remembers, where trauma has a physical shape, and where healing is a biological imperative, they will use it to tell every single kind of story imaginable.
To summarize the core themes we've explored today, Yaenddarr is a universe where the environment is literally shaped by memory, trauma, and love.
It began with Celestria's motherly love birthing a planet of reactive abundance, beautifully illustrated by the eternal nostalgia of Autumn Falls.
We see it manifest in the Elixir Lakes, a liquid archive that uses the precise emotional memories of fragmented souls to gently invite them back to life.
And it reaches its most poignant, difficult extreme in the Wildling Field, where the Fair are forced to confront and process their literal, physicalized rage, dying and respawning until they can finally lay down their armor and find peace.
It is a world that absolutely refuses to let you hide from your past. It makes you walk on it every single day.
Which brings me to a lingering question for you listening right now. In Yaenddarr, the planet remembers everything. The ground you walk on, the water you drink, the trees outside your window, it all records your trauma, your rage, your joy, and your healing. It makes you wonder if our own Earth worked exactly like Yaenddarr, if the map of your life wasn't static, if the ground beneath your feet right now physically manifested your deepest memories and your unresolved conflicts. What kind of biome would you be living in today? Would you be walking through the peaceful, nostalgic gold of an enchanting autumn falls? Or would you be hacking your way through the overgrown, reactive shadows of a savage jungle? It's something to think about the next time you take a walk and look at the dirt beneath your shoes. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we will see you on the next deep dive.